Well, hi, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the MegaCast by Actual Tech Media. Our topic today is securing your borders, evolving each layer of your security program. My name is Jess Steinbach. I am so excited to be here with you all today for this important discussion because this genuinely is such an important conversation. Wherever your organization is at this moment, maybe you're building whole new security walls or renovating existing walls, there's no way that security is not a top of mind consideration for all of us. And it is, and it should be. But the words security program can mean something very different from person to person, organization to organization. And the whole concept can feel so layered and complex that it can sometimes be a bit overwhelming to consider any changes or growth. So the exciting thing is that all of you are here today at the webinar to explore and consider some aspect or maybe aspects of your organization's security environment. And the even better news is you are not alone. On this MegaCast, we will be joined by top innovators from Rubric, Rapid7, Palo Alto, and Reliacquest. These awesome experts are here to talk to us about all the current trends, tools, and technologies that you need to know as you consider the growth, evolution, and maintenance of your organization's security program. Now, if you haven't joined us on a MegaCast in the past, a very special welcome to all you first-timers out there. Actual Tech Media created the MegaCast and the EcoCast series to help educate technology professionals like you on the latest innovations and trends in enterprise technology. Now, these webinars are designed to get you the hottest insights and up-to-date information to help you solve your most pressing technology challenges. But before we get into our MegaCast today, I just want to go through a few things that are going to help you get the most out of your day. Now, of course, we do have some of those awesome prizes lined up for you as always. I'm going to get back to those in just a moment. But first, I want to draw your attention on over to the questions window in your webinar control panel. If you haven't already said hi, we love seeing all you awesome folks connecting out there from around the world. Give us a virtual wave. I saw a lot of people commenting on the music this morning. I want to assure you that I am also having a dance party at my desk every morning. I absolutely love that intro music, and it just gets my juices going, gets me in a good mood. So I'm glad to see that you guys were all joining me for that dance party this morning. Questions console is also a great place to let us know if there's any technical issues that come up today. Now, I do want to remind you that a browser refresh is going to clear out any of the usual tech gremlins, but if not, go ahead and shoot us a message over the live chat, and the Actual Tech Media team will be there to help. Now, most importantly, we want this to be an informative webinar for you, so we want your technical questions. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged, ask all the security questions you might have. I know there will be lots, so keep them coming. Now, if we do not get to your question during the live webinar, don't worry. The awesome humans from Rubric, from Rapid7, from Palo Alto, and from Reliacquest are going to be following up with you afterwards, so you will get answers to your questions. Now, if you see that little social button up on your screen there, I want you to take a look at that Twitter button. It should be down in the lower part of your audience console. If you have a cool aha moment today during the MegaCast, go ahead and click on that button there, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast is going to be automatically added to your post. You can share that wonderful aha moment with all of your friends. Now, while you're exploring the audience console, I mentioned the questions tab earlier. Right next to that is the handouts tab. So make sure that you dig around in that handouts tab during the webinar today and open those tabs, download those resources to save for later. There's some fantastic takeaways from our speakers here today. There's an info pack collection of data sheets, white papers, demos, ebooks, and more. So definitely visit that handout section and download those resources. Okay, well, as I mentioned, I'm Jess Steinbach, and I'm going to be your moderator here today from Actual Tech Media. And I will also be joined by my friends and fellow moderators, Scott Becker and David Davis, who's going to be here in just a moment. But before we get into our keynote chat for today, I said I would come back to the prizes, and I meant it. So in today's MegaCast, you have a chance to win one of 10 Apple Watches. Those are Series 7, and that's not even including the $500 Amazon gift cards that we're going to be giving away every 30 minutes. So lots of prizes here today. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for the prizes. All winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those T's and C's are, no worries. Just head on over to that handout section that I mentioned earlier. Scroll on down to the bottom. You can find the full T's and C's for you there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we love seeing all your questions coming in. In fact, we love it so much. We have a special extra little fun prize for you all today. So in today's MegaCast, we're going to be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked in each of our live sessions, each session. So we're going to review all the questions asked after the webinar wraps today, which means that even if your question does not get read out in our live Q&As after the sessions, don't worry, there's still a chance to win that gift card. Now, I'm going to put up a few reminders on the screen here of some T's and C's that you can check out, including the fact that all prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. And hey, if you are lucky enough to be a winner on the webinar today and you would like to donate the value of your prize to one of our selected charities, we would love to help make that happen. Thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media webinars, thousands of dollars have been donated to these charities. So if you're a winner today, you want to get involved with an amazing organization that you see up here, please let us know. We're very happy to help facilitate that. Now, again, we're very happy to have you here at the live webinar with us today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So make sure to connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and Facebook. We definitely want to hear from you. If you're looking for some more awesome content after we wrap today, be sure to head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. We have lots of exciting webinars on demand right there for you. So head on over, subscribe, start exploring. Now, while you're gathering some cool resources for later, I'm also going to recommend that you check us out on LinkedIn. Make sure to reach out, connect. Lots of great resources for you there. And speaking of exciting content, if you haven't visited the Gorilla Guide Book Club yet, why not? Head on over there right now. The Gorilla Guide Book Club, well, not right now. Stay with me now. Go later. The Gorilla Guide Book Club gives you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on your trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle. So if you're planning for the long weekend to be hanging out at the dock or the lake and you want to take a nice technical reading book with you, you can load this right on your Kindle or mobile device. They're completely free. You can download them at gorilla.guide. There's a link in that Handouts tab for you as well. Now, I have definitely said this before, but we think you're just lovely, and we want to keep growing this incredible community. So another fun way to win a prize is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. You're going to find a link to do that right in your Handouts tab, and you will be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar as well. Now, I want to promise you that we are not going to spam your friends or coworkers. That's very important. We will send them one invite to join us at an upcoming webinar, and if they don't respond, we give them one more little reminder, and that's it. We will not harass them. So make sure that you do enter your friends, your coworkers in to draw. You could both win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month. So hey, you know, win-win situation. All right, well, that's it for the housekeeping. I want to say I just saw Russell's comment that he loves the Gorilla Guides. Yes, Russell, I love that. Hopefully you've got some new Gorilla Guide reading planned for the weekend. All right, well, we've done it. We've gotten through all of our initial housekeeping, and here we are. Now, something that most of you probably already know is that every organization has a different way of discussing and considering security program design and maintenance. So for a lot of you out there, being able to explain the why within your organization to your team members, to your bosses or folks that report to you, however your team is structured, but people within your own organization, it's almost as important as knowing the what, right? So I asked my fellow moderator and expert in really just about all things, David Davis, to join me for a quick chat about the storytelling of security programming. Why do we approach it in layers? What are the layers? And how do we explain those layers to others? It's going to be a great convo. So hang tight for 1 second, and I am going to get David on the platform here with me.
Well, hey, David, and thanks for joining me today on the MegaCast.
It's great to be back with you again, Jess.
Well, David, I wanted to talk to you today about the topic of our MegaCast, and that's securing each layer of your security program. It's a great concept, but when I started talking to people about the layers of security planning, I found two things. First, no one quite agrees on how many layers there actually are, and no one agrees on the right metaphor to explain and describe them. Are we peeling the layers of an onion? Is it a rainbow? Is it a cake? Is it a castle in a moat? I am overwhelmed by literary options, David. Can you help walk us through this?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are so many different and wonderful, colorful metaphors in the world of security. And so none of them are perfect. I'll just give everyone that sneak peek ahead of time. There's no one perfect metaphor, but yeah, I would love to jump into this.
Okay, perfect. So it won't be perfect, but we'll come up with something. I knew you were the right person for this, David. Before we jump into how we actually describe the layers of security, why is it so important to identify these different layers in the first place? Why not just focus on one hard candy coating of security?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Before we jump into that, let's do a little bit of joke. I love jokes and security jokes. Here's one. The IT pro or security expert comes in and says all our devices are 100% secure, and the CEO or CIO says, "How'd you do that?" And he says, "Well, I turned them all off." And so that just tells us the only way to secure everything is really just to turn it all off. As soon as it's on the network, there's always some level of risk. And the idea with the layers, I think, is just to try to address as many different layers of risk as possible. But if we start off with one of the first metaphors that I heard of when we very first connected the company I worked for at the time to the internet, it was security is like an egg where we have to get a firewall to protect us from the internet, and then once the traffic is inside of our network, it's really got that soft gooey center. But that's okay. At the time back then, it was like, well, that's okay. As long as we have that hard outer shell, to protect us, kind of like the castle wall we'll talk about later, to protect us, everything will be fine. But, over time, we started to learn like, hey, that's really not a good metaphor for protecting ourselves when it comes to the network, because as soon as someone penetrates that one outer layer of the eggshell, well, the egg is broken and they can just do whatever they want to do once they're inside the network. And so it's really not very secure. And then someone said, well, what about the security jawbreaker? You've got these multiple hard layers before anyone can get to your crown jewels, the center of the gobstopper or the jawbreaker, whatever it is. And, I like that. I like candy. Yeah, that sounds great. But I'm not really sure that that's the perfect metaphor either. And then another metaphor here is the defense in depth. Of course, we always talk about defense in depth when it comes to security. And it's not just network security, but it's also, physical security. If you think of like a fort or a castle or a military base, they have defense in depth where you don't just put a fence around it. There's more to it than that. And that really brings us to the security onion here, where there's multiple layers to the onion. And you can, define them kind of however you want. This website here, which I've referenced on the screen, defined it as policies and procedures, then physical security, then perimeter, then internal network, host security, application, and finally data security. But I'm going to keep going on to more of them. But any thoughts or comments on that first, Jess?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm glad you just started listing those layers there, because that's one of the questions that I had. I've heard people talk about 5 layers or 6 layers or 7 layers. So how do we actually know how many layers there are? Is it different by each organization, and actually, what are the different layers we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, these are all just really kind of theoretical models, on how to best protect yourself. So I think, like I said, there's no one perfect model. There's no, officially endorsed one model. I'm sure there are high-level consulting organizations, and they have their own models and their own concepts of the layers. But I mean, kind of the most common one I've seen out there is the security rainbow, I'll call it, because it's so colorful. This comes from GoMindSight.com. I love the graphic. There's many of these different types of graphics with 7 different layers out there on the web that talk about, the human layers, kind of the outside, your most, our weakest link, we typically call it, because that's where our end users are and the humans are that tend to make a lot of mistakes sometimes. Then there's perimeter security, network security, endpoint, application, data, and then finally, that's where your mission critical assets are. But a lot of folks talk about that. And then here's another kind of, I called it the overwhelming detail model. And I apologize, the graphics a little fuzzy there, but this comes from datadriveninvestor.com, and they may have sourced it from somewhere else. But here's just an example of all the kind of multitude of different solutions that might fit into these 7 different layers of security. So, as we said, the weakest link is kind of always your end users, who might just be putting their passwords on the screen on their Post-it notes. But my favorite, before we move on here, because I know we're running out of time, my favorite is kind of the castle metaphor here, where you have the hard, or the moat first, and then the hard outer walls. Of course, you have the man trap right there, at the end of the drawbridge, where you can pour the boiling oil on anyone who gets past that. And then the watchtowers and the inner walls, and then finally the keep, where you have your most critical assets, the king's gold, or whatever it might be.
I like that, and I hope people are thinking about the digital man traps that they might have, or technological ones. Hopefully, not real ones in their company. What I'm taking away from that, David, you mentioned the onion and the rainbow and the egg, and now the castle. And I'm with you. I like the castle too. I think that's a fun one. But I guess regardless of the metaphor that we're using, it seems like the important part is understanding what the layers are for you. So there may not be one set number. It's these 5 layers, and this exact metaphor and this exact solution equals security. It's more figuring out what is involved at your organization, who needs to be affected by that, who's responsible for it, who's monitoring, who's protecting, and kind of really making sure that you understand your own particular organization before you start building out each of these layers.
That's right. I mean, there's no silver bullet, in security. The important thing is just that you're understanding the big picture, that there's multiple different, potential entry points for threats into your organizations. There's many different types of vulnerabilities. I mean, you don't want to spend $1 million on a multi-point security, software solution, and then simply leave the data center doors unlocked so that anyone can just walk in and take your choice, take your, critical data away or destroy it in some way. So a lot of great different metaphors. And I think the great opportunity with these is to bring these to, your fellow IT professionals and the IT organization, to your CIO and to your executives, and talk about, the different metaphors here, the different ways that companies could be attacked, that your data could be accessed and held for ransom or stolen, and then used against you as ammunition to somehow destroy your company. So some great metaphors. Hopefully they help folks out there. And I'm really excited about today's event because we've got some exciting solutions that cover, security across all the different layers. I mean, we've got, let's see here, we've got Palo Alto, Rapid7, Reliacquest, Rubric, and it's going to be a great event.
Yeah, I'm, perfect way to wrap things up there. I do think hopefully some folks out there have gotten some good storytelling vehicles that they can use to help kind of explain some of the things that you may already be putting into place in your organization, or that you may be considering some evolutions of. As we talk about all the time, it's really important to be able to communicate all the things that we're working on. So hopefully some of these metaphors we've explored today are feeling like stories that you can bring back to your organization. And as David, as you mentioned, there is no one silver bullet. And I think you were kind of hitting on this, that, some of the solutions we're going to hear about today are going to help you address several of these layers and kind of help you make that a little bit less daunting. Sometimes taking the whole of security in one go can feel really overwhelming. But if you start, breaking apart that layered approach, it's a little more approachable.
Absolutely. Well said.
All right. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been a pleasure as always. And let's get moving with our MegaCast.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay, well, thank you to those of you also who posted some comments and chimed in with your own favorite metaphors. Andy, I agree. David is the best. Andy just said David's the best. He is the best. We're all happy. He took a little break, and we're all happy to have him back. I see some high fives for the and cheers for the onion model. Some high fives and cheers for the moat and the castle. Clearly, the egg is no longer in favor. But if you do have a favorite metaphor, please feel free to post. We love hearing from you. And again, I appreciate, the layer castle, Sarah says. I appreciate getting feedback. And Gilbert, I also saw your shout out to David, and he saw it as well. So he's appreciative of that. Anyways, just nice to see the community connecting. And if you look up on the screen here right now, you can see there's a question for you all. Again, this is just a great way for us to kind of get to know you a little bit more. I just have to read this one out. Crystal says, my favorite is the onion. It's got a great set of layers, but can still make you cry if you slice it incorrectly. Yes, Crystal, you win the day today. That's brilliant. All right, so if somebody asked you to describe your role in your organization at a high level, how would you answer that? Do you say you work in tech? Do you say you work in IT? Or do you say something else entirely? Now, obviously, we're talking high level, so it's just kind of in passing in that 30-second cocktail party situation, before you turn around and move on to the next person. Yes, I work in tech. Yes, I work in IT. Or no, something totally different. So let us know how you self-identify in your role. And then, okay, we need to add cybersecurity to that role question. That's a good feedback, Joseph. I like that. I will pass that on to the team. So if you are in cybersecurity, please do add that into the other. And again, nice for us to see where you guys are kind of resonating so that we can make sure we're tailoring our content to that. The next question up here is we're wondering about the time frame that you're looking to add new or update existing IT solutions at your company. So in this case, obviously, we're looking specifically at the security layers that we're going to learn about now. And I did see a comment somebody mentioned, I hope we're not just going to focus on the human element today. I do know that we tend to get stuck there because it is a really complicated and complex element, but we're going to dig into all the layers today. So when you're thinking about those solutions, what is the solution or the time frame that you'd be looking to implement some of these changes, solutions, evolutions, whole new systems. And I'm seeing a pretty good mix across the board, which, as I've said to you all before, that's kind of my favorite place to start. We have a lot of not sures, and that tells me that you guys are here, you're interested, but maybe not necessarily for like a specific time frame. And that's really exciting. That means that you're learning and researching in the early strategy phases. So I love that. Okay, well, I am going to move things along because we have a lot of great content to dig into, and I am sure that you are all just as excited about it as I am. So let's get rolling with our sessions. So our very first presenter in today's MegaCast is somebody that you guys are probably all familiar with. She's absolutely one of my favorite presenters. Tracy Ator, sales engineer at Rubric. Tracy, it is always a pleasure to connect with you. I know you have a lot of great content, as always, to help us kick off the MegaCast today. So the platform is all yours, Tracy.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining today, and I am happy to be here, especially because we do have some brand new things in store for you, fresh off the heels of our Forward conference, which took place a few weeks back in beautiful, sunny San Diego, California. So my name is Tracy Ator, and I am one of the inside sales engineers covering the Bay Area and Rockies territory here in our mid-market segment. And my plan today is to go over some of those new and exciting things we announced, and of course, hop into Polaris 2.0 to show it in the flesh. So without further ado, let's get started. So starting with Rubric's core competency, pretty much, I'm going to lay the foundation out here. So what Rubric does is we collapse what was once a traditionally complex legacy architecture into a single software fabric that scales out infinitely between on-prem and cloud environments. So the goal of Rubric was to build a better, faster, less expensive backup and recovery platform with the cloud in mind starting from day one. When protecting on-prem workloads, we typically do position a 2U chassis with 4 blades in it. It's a hyperconverged appliance built on x86 architecture. Each blade inside the chassis does have CPU, it has memory, it has a 10 or 25 gig port for the data, optional 10 gigs for management. Each blade also has a hybrid disk architecture, so you will get SSDs for the performance and caching, which gets us up to 30,000 IOPS per appliance. And then you'll also get hard disk drives for the storage itself. And we could scale this all out by adding another chassis as you grow, should you need to expand your storage footprint. The way to think about it is it's similar to vSAN structures. So the more you add, the more of everything you get, because it's going to lock arms and be seen as one. So with that being said, there is no additional hardware shopping needed, since the software, compute, and storage is all woven together. So it is a turnkey solution straight out of the box. And then from the inception of Rubric, we've always put data security front and center. So this is evident in our immutable, built from scratch, append-only file system that we've paired with the zero trust architecture that we will get into a little bit more on my next slide. And then part of our innovation was to build data forensics into our platform. So you can do more with your backups, which we will also touch on in a moment, because that's very important. And then our solution does hook into your environment using APIs, so we can easily integrate with VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, AHV, those hypervisors, or even SOAR or SIEM tools like Splunk, ServiceNow, etc. Or really any orchestration tools your security operations team is currently using for things like system event notifications or incident response. When it comes to recovery, again, we are leveraging those SSDs for the quickest performance. Live mount is one of our most popular functions. That's where we could spin up a virtual machine on the Rubric system itself. So we are leveraging Rubric's own data stores to host that virtual machine, which, you know, we then give you the option after you've done what you needed to do to that second copy of the VM hosted on Rubric. You can, you know, do things like move it back into production in the least disruptive manner. And one of the use cases or test cases that I've seen using Liberty Mutual as an example, I believe it was a 14 terabytes database. We were able to recover it in about 14 minutes using live mount after what had been 23 hours previously. And then most importantly, and the main reason customers are investing in these types of projects, is our ability to recover and recover quickly. So we provide you with options here. I just mentioned one of them. You can do surgical, you could do granular recovery of just a few files, file level recovery. We do really well here. I love demoing that. And then of course, a bulk recovery or even automated orchestrated recovery at the application level as well. And then to help drive the point home here in summary of how secure we are starting day one. By the way, none of these features that you see here on the screen are a bolt-on. You don't have to shop for additional components. I'm going to keep saying that. And you also don't need additional licensing to add any of this in. These are all just standard features that come with every appliance when we protect your on-prem workloads. And then you could see we're pretty much a bunker in the box because of that. Our platform does run on top of a BSD distro of Linux, where we have stripped out what is not needed, and there's also no direct shell, just a command line interface to interact with the API itself. And then sitting at the core of who we are is our immutable append-only file system Atlas, where all backups get written to locally, and it's not accessible or exposed through any off-the-shelf browsable protocols, so figure like NFS or SMB. It just essentially sits offline, so once backup data gets written to it, it cannot be modified, changed, or deleted by any bad actors. When it comes time to do any type of restore, replication, any operation taking place on top of that data needs to be authenticated through APIs and appropriate credentials, which is also verified by Atlas to ensure data integrity and something is what they say it is. And then touching more on zero trust methodology, we also enable end-to-end encryption, meaning all data is encrypted in flight using TLS 1.2 and at rest using AES-256-bit encryption. And then we also enable our users to set up multi-factor authentication, whether that's through RSA Secure ID, Duo, or anything SAML 2.0 compliant. We even have our own two-factor authentication built in, where you can enable things like TOTP and challenge users for an authentication token using a secondary device or an authenticator app like Okta, Microsoft, or Google. If you're concerned about the backups themselves, getting into the wrong hands, I get this question a lot. Maybe it's, you know, a rogue admin, for example. You can turn on something called retention lock, which can prevent the premature deletion of snapshots from either malicious or accidental means. And then that actually requires quite a bit of human interaction between Rubric support and at least 2 designated compliance contacts on your end. And then this is applied upon creating an SLA policy when you go to define how often you want to take snapshots and how long you want to keep them. And then you go and assign that to certain workloads. And then we also prevent Ntp poisoning. So this is really unique. So that's where criminals are able to change or take control of the time source and then change the backup on the back end by adjusting the time in the platform, thinking it's, say 50 years ahead, which in turn will expire all the backup points. So there's very few technologies in the market space today that could prevent that. However, we do prevent that, and that was by way of implementing what's called a monotonic clock into our platform, which says not only do we not trust the time that the NTP server is giving us, but we'll also guarantee that the time will always move forward and not be impacted by variations leading to jumps in time. Its purpose is to count passage of time. In Rubric's case, we're counting seconds, thus preventing expired backups through Ntp poisoning. So that's pretty interesting. And then earlier this year at Forward, we did introduce a new concept here, and that is Rubric Security Cloud. So this is our future, but our goal remains the same, and that is to ensure two things: no data lost and no ransom paid. For us, it's about protecting the enterprise through a hybrid approach. And then achieving that promise of zero trust security, it does require more than just infrastructure security because attacks are becoming, more targeted by the day. And then as it stands, currently backups are the highest priority for bad actors to target. So it's important to know that you need to protect your data at the very source, somehow, some way. So we have shifted our entire focus to combining backup and data security tools delivered as software as a service to complement traditional infrastructure security. So we can fully secure your critical applications in your business. And for us, it's about achieving data resilience, data observability, and most importantly, data recoverability here. So with those three things in place by Rubric standards, you get, first and foremost, data resiliency guaranteed. So you will always have a clean copy of your backups that can never be compromised thanks to our immutable file system, Atlas, which we just talked about. And, it's important to know, to this day, we have never been compromised at that layer, making this definitely a unique differentiator in the market, our Atlas file system. We also introduced earlier this year Rubric Cloud Vault, which we co-engineered directly with Microsoft to provide a fully managed Rubric service built on Azure Cool or Azure Archive for, customers that want to archive their data short-term or long-term. And then the data is also completely isolated since it's put into our own tenant. So that's all fully secure, managed by us here at Rubric. There's also predictable costs as well, which covers storage, reads, API calls, and egress charges. And then, of course, we could protect your M365 environment in a similar fashion, whether that's Exchange users, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. This data has obviously become a huge target for bad actors. I believe Mandiant, that popular computer security firm, they have even gone out and said that 365 is a gold mine for ransomware groups because most organizations, they tend to hold a lot of business critical and confidential data in their M365 footprints. All right, so when it comes to Rubric's data observability, that pillar right there in the middle, we do give you the ability to find and understand the blast radius of a ransomware attack, also known as anomalous event detection. So you can narrow down exactly what has been encrypted and what needs to be recovered, which in an event like this can save you from a ton of downtime. And most importantly, you never have to go Bitcoin shopping again. You'll also know if any sensitive data was in scope, leveraging our sensitive data discovery tool, formerly known as Sonar. And that's often required by cyber insurance and compliance standards. And then finally, you'll have incident containment, where you may have heard it out in the wild as threat hunting here at Rubric. So that will give you the ability to roll back to the last known good state without concern of reinfection, right? So we can narrow down which snapshots are in their last known clean state before exfiltration began. So essentially, you're not stuck running malware labs, and that's pretty nice. Then finally, that last pillar, that's just stating the obvious, data recovery. That's simple, right? It's critical. And with Rubric, you'll have those options, right? So lastly, and then we'll launch into that Polaris 2.0 tour. So those further along in their cloud journey, we provide Rubric native tools to backup and recover workloads in the cloud because we want to simplify the way that you manage those backups. We support very complex multi-cloud workloads through that same single pane of glass approach, just as your other workloads you protect on-prem through Polaris. Those workloads being Azure VMs, EC2 instances, RDS, EBS databases, or file servers that live across Azure, AWS, or GCP. Our solution here, it aims to address the fact that after our customers have gone through their lift and shift, or they've built things cloud native, they want to make sure that they could provide that same level of governance and security they once had on-prem, and we could solve that. So from a configuration perspective, there's absolutely no running resources here like on-prem hardware. All we're doing is connecting via an API to assume a role from our Rubric account with specific conditions to use this role with some modifications based on the cloud provider. For scalable protection, we offer the ability to create a policy that spans hundreds or thousands of resources in the cloud by simply telling it what kind of RPO and RTO you want. And then this could span all your cloud workloads if you want to by resource groups, tag rules, maybe you want to protect entire accounts, subscriptions, or maybe you want to, take a more granular specific approach by maybe just an Azure VM here and there, or an EC2 instance, or many EC2 instances, EBS volumes, etc. You set that policy up, and this software will handle the entire backup and recovery process. In terms of security, we can leverage things like storage tiering into immutable storage for Azure Storage blobs, which you configure within your Azure portal. For AWS, we have object level immutability on our roadmap for the second half of this year. Our AWS customers today air gap leveraging cross-account replication with us, which is highly recommended. So you have an air gap copy of your data. Again, we could help you orchestrate that. And then from a usability standpoint, we purposely developed a no-brainer approach. So we have a point-and-click multi-cloud dashboard experience that the operator can go into. You could derive reporting from, have visibility in a way that native tooling from a cloud provider that you might be leveraging today, they cannot do this across different clouds. So we could solve that as well. All right. So it looks like I have a little time left, so I'll launch into Polaris.0 and give you that quick tour I've been talking about. So give me a minute. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen real quick and hop over there. Perfect. Here it is. All right. And here we go. Now we can get started. All right. So new look and feel, or at least to those that may have saw Polaris 1.0 previously. So we've obviously made a couple changes here. So new look, it's blue, which I find easier on my eyes, to be honest with you. If for whatever reason you want to switch back to bright theme, you can. That is also an option. But nope, starting at this global dashboard page, you could still see off the bat a consolidated view for monitoring activities across your Rubric appliances and where they might live across data centers across the globe. You could also see all your protected objects on-prem and in the cloud down here. Whoops. And then you get full visibility into any task running and compliance and events overview from an SLA perspective. Over here to the right, you can see ransomware investigation. That's all formerly known as Radar. Currently, it's alerting me to one anomalous event right here on my global dashboard page. Data discovery, that's formerly known as Sonar. So going into that tool, you're gonna, be able to leverage what's called a predefined template, or you could maybe customize your own dictionaries or expressions into an analyzer. So you could go out and search for things that might put you at risk, right? So personal identifying information as it relates to like your customers or maybe even you, anything HIPAA, GDPR, GLBA, that tool will go out and report back what it may have found out in the wild and give you a chance to clean those up before either an unexpected audit maybe or even a ransomware event. And then going into, let's go into the gear settings. I like to talk about some of the security stuff that you could do in here. So there is a couple things you could do from a login perspective. So we could enable things like SSO, So you could establish the SAML 2.0 connection with an identity provider like Okta, Microsoft, and Google using those authenticators. You could also leverage IP whitelisting, which allows Rubric to limit access to the Rubric console to just trusted IP addresses or IP ranges. And you can enable multi-factor authentication where you would need, the help of a second device like your smartphone to generate a one-time passcode to authenticate yourself for another user, again, through an identity provider like Okta, Microsoft, and Google authenticators. Those are the popular three that we support. And then going into what we do protect here in Polaris, this is pretty fun. So I have my inventory tab up here. Everything data center is going to be everything on-prem. So if I click into that, you could see I have my vSphere card, my Hyper-V, Nutanix, Linux, Windows file sets, volumes, things like that. You can see what's currently protected out of what's maybe remaining, or sorry, it means 101 virtual machines, but only 47 of those are protected, meaning I have active SLA domains assigned to 47 of those virtual machines. What's also cool about this inventory thing at the top, it's also here as well, but I like to go up here. If I go to SaaS, this is where you could find my M365 tile. So you could see I am protecting a number of things: Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. I got my users being protected here, all their mailboxes, OneDrive, files and folders, or entire OneDrives across users. I got SharePoint. SharePoint tends to be really popular amongst the people that I talk to. So you can see I have a number of site collections here in my demo lab. If I go into legal, you could see that we do backup document libraries. We could back up list. Going back to Exchange, sorry, I glossed over that. We can protect entire mailboxes, and we get pretty granular here. I actually type in Tracy. Let's just pretend for a minute, I clicked on a link that I shouldn't have. Please restore my entire mailbox, or maybe I lost a few emails. It's real simple how we do this. I have this snapshot here. I click recover, highlight mailbox. I can recover Tracy's entire mailbox, whereas Microsoft might take a week to give you a snapshot, a point in time to recover from. We did that in a couple clicks. And here's where we get more granular. Here's all of her emails. We only collect metadata ever. You don't actually have, access to the full content there. And you could search for individual emails by using a keyword in the subject line. And then you could select which emails you want to restore. And here's those options: back to the original user or restore to another user. So that's M365. And then lastly, I talked about the fact that we do protect cloud native workloads. So here are my EC2 instances, my Azure SQL databases, my Azure VMs, GCP down here. There are those cards. And that is that. If you are interested in a full demo, you probably know where to find us to set that up. You could also visit rubric.com, or you could contact your local value-added reseller or anybody that you might work with in that sense, and they could get you set up on a more in-depth demo into this. But for now, that was the sizzle demo. Actually, this is just the tour. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to answering some questions.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for that awesome presentation and for sticking around to answer some questions. I have to say, I love the new look. It's great. Very, very soothing, the blue.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a big favorite feature that I'm hearing a lot compared to our Polaris 1.0.
It's funny, we were talking a little earlier about instructional design, and it's really important, these seemingly small things, color, layout, and especially with usability, it can actually make a big difference.
Yeah, it matters, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and the demo was awesome. We do have some great questions coming in, so are you ready to jump in?
I am.
Great, okay. I wanted to start, so Deb sent a question in. She was wondering about free trials and whether or not that would be possible. Is that something that, is there a way people can try, especially the M365 solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually really simple to get started. So if they head on over to like rubric.com, you'll see like a magnifying glass to do a search. You can literally search M365 free trial there. And we offer that free for 30 days. So if they like it, it's a seamless transition from PO to production. and then you could keep what you already have backed up during that trial, which is nice. So yeah, that's really easy to get started on, no problem.
I love that. Okay, Deb, there's your answer. Your students will get a chance to try it out. You know, I wanted to ask this one as well, because we are chatting today a little bit about, yes, all the solutions, but also that kind of human element, and really an important aspect with a security awareness program being the human side of it. So he was wondering about the skill sets and certifications that, you know, is there any additional training that would be recommended for administering Rubric, or do you feel that you've created something that's kind of simple enough that no additional training required?
Yeah, so we're very big on training here. So depending on what solution of ours that you're deploying, I mean, there's a number of SKUs that you can include to get the training. So I believe we call those accelerator SKUs. And then also, you know, we publish how-to videos all the time on YouTube. We also have something called EduBrite that I think is linked to our support portal that we could share with our customers, and, you know, walking them through how to get started on, you know, again, whatever particular solution they're trying to set up. And then, of course, you can leverage your sales engineer, right, that probably did the demo with you to help you in that regard, of course, depending on what it is, right? So yeah, there's a lot of different things out there that can enable our customers to ensuring a seamless process.
Well, that's important. Yeah, this is an interesting one, and Chris has really expressed that he's struggling a lot with shared drives. So he hasn't been able to figure out a way to back up or a solution that works with backing up any kind of shared drive. Is that something that you have any insight in, Tracy?
You know, I might need to drill into that question a little bit deeper. So if he wants to reach out to me directly, by all means, tracy.ator@rubric.com. I would have additional questions surrounding that. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me directly, and we'll take that one offline.
I love that. Yeah, Chris, it sounds like there might be solutions out there. So this is a good place to get started. Okay, you know what? I have to say, I love the word threat hunting. I don't know why, but that is just very evocative for me. So I like that idea. So you mentioned incident containment and threat hunting. How are you actually looking for those threats?
Yeah, so we have a few indicators that can be used for the hunt. I love that too, threat hunting. So you can leverage, you know, things like Yara rules. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that, but that is one of the most popular methods for this. So just to kind of like deep dive into that. So that is the standard definition used to identify malware using scripts that look for those indicators. Those scripts look specifically at strings inside the file itself that exist within ransomware. If you currently have a third-party security intelligence team, you know, some customers out there may already have access to this type of threat intelligence, whether that's CrowdStrike or whomever in that space. But what that will tell you is what the trend is this week or today, what that looks like. So maybe it's Lockbit Trojan making its rounds, maybe it's Ryuk malware, guaranteed file hash values or Yara rules already exist for you somewhere for you to use during a threat hunt. And then I've also seen independent security researchers on the internet make these available to the public as well. So you take those, you put it into our tool, we'll go out and look for those indicators depending on where it's coming from.
Interesting. Yeah, and so Joseph chimed in here. He said his experience with threat hunting is that he's found that it's looking for different rather than bad. Would you agree with that?
Correct, yeah. And then there's also a couple other things that you could leverage too that I should mention. So we could also do file hashes, so, you know, specific hash values inside the file, or you can look for file patterns, which are just the specific file paths to search for the malware. Maybe it's .ryuk, .conti, you know, whatever the cyber criminals are using in this day and age, we could do that too.
Tracy, again, thank you so much for an amazing presentation and demo and sticking around to answer some questions. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Well, same to you, Tracy, and thanks again for kicking off our MegaCast on such a great note. We got just so much positive feedback coming in from that presentation, and I saw a couple of comments as I was going through the questions with people kind of agreeing that the look and the feel is really nice, especially when you're in high-stress situations. You want a nice, calming, easy-to-use dashboard. So I'm glad that you guys all agreed with me on that. You can see that I put a poll up here, and what we're wondering is what additional information you would like to get from Rubric. So if you are looking for any additional information, this is a great way to reach out directly to the Rubric team. I think there was a lot of you out there that this really tickled something in your brain, seemed like something you're interested in. So, you know, a quick and easy way to let the Rubric team know that you're interested in learning a little bit more is just to click on the poll there. Another great way to get some further information is to click on the Handouts tab. I mentioned that at the start. So again, looking at your audience console, there's the handouts window and the questions window. So click on over to that handouts tab, click on the Rubric link there. It's actually going to take you to the Rubric website, and you can book a demo, find some more resources. So there's lots of cool stuff going on there in that handouts tab. But do take a second and fill out the poll. Let Rubric know what you would like to hear. And I do also want to let you know, I know we got to a few questions there, and there was a lot more that we did not get to. So if you did ask a question and we didn't get to it, A, keep in mind you're still entered to win that best question if you were wondering about that. And B, Tracy and the Rubric team will get all the questions that were asked after the session wraps today. So we'll make sure that they get that and that they're able to follow up with you. So you will hear back from the team. Okay, now while you're taking a second to fill out that poll, some of you may have noticed that there was a slide up recently while Tracy and I were chatting about prizes. And so I think it's time that we actually give away a few of those awesome prizes. So let's do it. So we have our very first giveaway of a $500 Amazon gift certificate, and then we'll do 2 Apple Watch, and that's a Series 7 Apple Watch. Now, I'm going to remind you all that you must be present at the live webinar at the MegaCast here today in order to win. Our first winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Mark Ahlers or Ahlers of Maryland. Mark Ahlers or Ahlers of Maryland. You have won a $500 Amazon gift card. And then let's do our first 2 winners of the Apple Watch, and again, Series 7. First one is Jonathan De Los Santos of Texas. That's Jonathan De Los Santos of Texas, and Adam Hendrick of Utah. Adam Hendrick of Utah. So congratulations to Mark on your gift card, and congratulations to Jonathan and Adam, who have each won an Apple Watch Series 7. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. Don't forget, there's still lots more chances to win one of those prizes today, plus, as I mentioned, that best question gift card from each session. But for now, let's keep zipping right along and jump into our next presentation here. Okay. So up next, I'm very excited to introduce you all to Devin Krugley, Practice Advisor, Vulnerability Risk Management at Rapid7. Devin, I know that you have a lot of great content to cover for us today, so I'm going to stop talking and hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, Devin.
My name is Devin Krugley. I'm the Practice Advisor here at Rapid7 and have a background as a practitioner for many years in large enterprise. Today, I serve in a role that allows me not only to advise our internal teams, product management engineers, but also our external client base on topics that range the full gamut from strategic direction to tactical implementation. Today, I'm going to talk to you really about methods and ways to improve your risk posture. Start off with maybe a little framing content here. Why is it getting harder? So, we continuously hear about the sprawl around security and well, not security necessarily so much as the infrastructure, the applications and the data that we're all responsible and accountable for maintaining. One contributor to that sprawl is the fact that DevOps is as a culture, right, as an artifact of culture, is continuing to increase the pace and the velocity of those updates, and that pace of update has also pervaded into what I'm referring to as below the hypervisor. So that's the infrastructure component, right? And that has obviously expanded the footprint, but also made things terribly complex. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. The infrastructure is also, right, we're using a ton of shared computing components or shared libraries, open source software, whether it be Log4j is a very recent example of the challenges with that, with maintaining and really instituting large applications or large business functions that have very critical components based on somebody else's code at the end of the day is problematic, as we've all seen. And lastly, right, the monetization of things that are executed through ransomware, but the value that attackers get from spending time trying to circumvent our controls is the highest I've ever seen, in my 20 plus years in the industry. And because of that sprawl, and I think the demand, right, and I guess to some extent, right, the supply, if we go back to a couple of the comments I made earlier here, it has grown and will continue to grow and be an area that attracts, what I will say is some pretty talented hackers or, folks that are looking to do us harm. I love this quote by Chris Krebs, integrating more and more insecure products, right, whether it be open source software libraries or the like, and making our job as security practitioners much more complicated. And that velocity, I don't think, is going to change anytime soon. The attack surface management, the ASM or the VRM, we have historically been able to continue, to maintain adequate coverage and adequate security. But this gap, this acceleration is continuing to grow, as you can see in this kind of visual depiction. I think also what's fueling that, no surprise to anyone, right, is digital transformation. I would advocate that no organization, right, no organization out there that is in the either commercial or even public sector space isn't subject to some piece of a digital transformation, even if it's not a formal initiative, a formal strategy within your organization. Digital transformation, just the consumption of SaaS, as an example, is it kind of qualifies an organization to be undergoing or involved in digital transformation, whether it's recognized or not. And that gap that we see is really something my organization, I'm certainly very passionate of, and really going to kind of be the focus of some of the content here I'm going to present to you today. Let's start with a question, or continue here with a question. And the question is, if an organization, a security organization, was able to double their investment, woohoo, right? Everybody's super excited. We got money. Do you, as a security practitioner, do you as an audience member today, could you cut in half your businesses, your cybersecurity risk? And I believe the answer is no. I do not believe that the answer to solving some of these challenges and achieving closure of that gap is related to security investment entirely. Certainly there is a part of it there. I think there are many other facets, not the least of which is having a better understanding of the infrastructure you're accountable to protect and maintain. But also, some of the details and the nuances that are being forced upon us because of the digital transformation. Things start, I think, with having a complete picture. I will say, but I will try to pull back from my eagerness to focus on fundamentals a bit here. I think that is a message that we continue to hear. I think it's extremely valid, but one of the fundamentals, right, is having strong asset management. And if we are responsible for securing all of the layers, right, which is part and really what this presentation series is predicated on. You can see multiple layers there. Is difficult. It's very complex, and I think the pace of that change is far accelerated. Most organizations' expertise and experience. I think we have little pockets, but it is growing in complexity. And to go back to some of the points I made earlier, we have open source libraries, we have agile methodologies, and we have some fracturing of the traditional security team. I think many organizations will, this will resonate with many organizations, right? You have a cloud security team, and you have the traditional IT security team. Sometimes they're, lockstep and together and working, but more often than not, our experience has been that they aren't, and that they're operating with different budgets, different leadership. They're operating with different objectives. But in order to protect assets across the entire stack, that needs to change. It's the first point I'll make here is that those fractured security teams or fractured security functions definitely need to be brought together, and it may take an organizational change, right? But I think in the near term, right, it's really indirect influence that can help guide that. I think one thing to aid, right, in bringing closure to that particular gap is some visibility, and visibility comes through using tools like asset management solutions. But I think more and more often now today, it requires looking at sources that haven't traditionally been a part of that. So it is not a new phrase, but to suggest following the money will lead you to some outcome. And I think that's true in security and asset management. Follow the money. Look at billing for AWS as an example, right? Who is using those services? And if you're fortunate enough to have centralized billing and management around your cloud providers, that's an excellent place to start. I think another very good practical suggestion is go and get to know these DevOps, these web application teams, right? Go and spend time with them, understand what their challenges are, understand what their business remit is, and you'll gain a very fresh perspective if you aren't already doing that. That will help you in a multitude of ways, not the least of which is gaining visibility. And I also believe, right, that extending coverage of these risks, right, everything from cloud to containers and virtualized infrastructure, that visibility across that stack should be the goal of an asset management program, whether it sit within security or sit external. But it's really thinking about the risks that an organization faces, and in this simple diagram, right, you can kind of see it in layers. But another way to think about that is in terms of business functions and understanding the business ultimately, not something I don't think is new or novel, but understanding the business function and what the business uses to deliver either to customers that are internal or clients that are internal will lead you down a much more clear path, right, to understanding your asset inventory and ultimately understanding those risks. Just a few stats here. I think I would be remiss if I didn't inject a little bit here, but based on these stats, moving from left to right, 98% of web applications attacks were successful in this one particular study, and this was by a very, I will say, mature and capable red teaming or pen testing organization. That's a huge number, right? That is something that no organization should be facing, but this particular organization was successful 98% of the time. And of that 98%, I think the end value here, I think it was over 100 different engagements. 71% of that time, right, they were able to achieve lateral movement within 2 days. So, not to continue or suggest that that there's FUD mixed in here, but it is growing, and the risk is growing. But I think also the pace at which we're seeing this is fundamentally different than we've experienced in the past. The next statistic here is something that actually our great team of researchers developed. And this is from our most recent 2021 vulnerability intelligence report. I think we'll make that available to you. But of the 33 is the number of new and widespread exploits that we've tracked. And of that, right, these new and widespread exploits, Log4j, Log4Shell, these widespread exploits and vulnerabilities, it is nearly 3 times as much, more than 3 times as much. You can see the little graphic there versus the year before. So again, this acceleration is continuing at an exponential rate. And finally, there probably no surprise to anyone, right? From 2019 to 2020, a little bit dated, but there's 2 times as many or twice as many breaches that have been publicly reported, right? So there's probably far more if we look, underneath the proverbial iceberg. But again, all reason, right, to possibly shift, at least for some organizations, shift our focus what has been traditional infrastructure, right? Our data centers and our laptops and endpoints, and really start to think about and incorporate the need to, again, protect the entire stack. Web applications being, I think, the most explosive in terms of growth. And again, going back to that complexity concept, it is a new world, I think, for many of us. Another aspect to that is the sprawl of APIs. API security, relatively new, I think, in our domain. But if you go back to 2010, 2015, there have been many studies generated around not just more APIs, but I think APIs that have greater access to the underlying data. At the end of the day, right, we're in the business of protecting data, and access through something that we haven't traditionally as security practitioners, at least not everyone, certainly in the audience, has thought about. Microsoft has made claims that they're very much focused on it. I would suggest otherwise. I think many of us would as well. But that concept of an API and what data it provides access to has led to some very real and material attacks. There's a few of them here. Bumble is rather interesting in being able to leverage an API to track the location, the physical presence of someone through triangulation. It's actually an interesting read. Take a look at that. Coinbase is, I think, a cross-site scripting. This is actually a logic flaw that allowed an attacker to manipulate a transaction. And in this case, Coinbase is involved in cryptocurrency, and be able to manipulate a transaction and to their benefit, right? And then WordPress, I think, is also an excellent example of this. This was the cross-site scripting challenge, but here they were able to manipulate emails and gain access to the underlying operating system, I think, of some of the target endpoints. But just a few examples around why API security, right? And thinking about APIs as part of your stack is increasingly important. Whether those controls come through web application firewall or WAF, or a modern firewall, if you will, or next-gen firewall. But also, going back to a comment I made, not to just throw FUD, right? What are we going to do about it? Is having those discussions, right, with teams and departments that traditionally probably weren't first in mind as a security practitioner, security team. Go and talk to the developers. Go and talk to those who are putting code forth. And I would suggest that the next step in that evolution is, do you have an SLA or an SLO or some sort of way to measure the strength, if you will, or the level of secure code that's being developed. A question that I often ask is, what is the rate of identified threats, whether that be through DAS testing or SaaS testing that goes in development, but what is that rate today, and are we tracking an upward or downward trend? Very simple question. The answer can be complex, but again, as a method to get ahead of this and to become more adept at protecting APIs, understand where the flaws are coming from, and working with those teams to develop, whether it be secure code training or other methods, is a way to really compress the risk of that across the stack. And in taking a different approach than I think our traditional reaction is to throw technology or throw a technical control at it. There are certainly other methods and other controls that can help us along the way here. A few kind of closing positioning statements here. When we're thinking about assessment, and whether that be assessment again of an API or code, the underlying code, having a mindset of the taking an offensive mindset, right? Not as a defender, can also kind of shrink that attack surface, if you will, or at least the concept of the attack surface. If we go back to a premise that I stated earlier, which is, we're in the business of protecting data, and whether that protection lead to, improved, brand or preservation of brand, or preservation of dollars, or reducing the chance that ransomware take hold in an organization. And not only do we have a dollar value, but we also have lost opportunity involved in that. Focusing on what's most important to the organization. And I think there have been different versions of this suggestion in the past, but an analogy I like to use that sometimes solidifies this concept is security is not intended to be spread like frosting on a cake, right? Security is intended to be specific and unique to the risk that data or that underlying function represents to our organization. If you ask yourself, well, what are the most important applications, or what are the most important cloud environments to our organization, and you can't answer those things, then that is a very clear indication that some homework and some time need to be spent there. You're not spreading evenly across the cake, right? You're picking areas that require maybe a different level of the same control, a different level of rigor around how that control is implemented, and probably ultimately, right, a different measure, whether that be a KPI. Our organization is experimenting with the term a protection level agreement, right? What is your protection level agreement with those departments or those elements within an organization that are most important, most vital, and having an understanding of there, and then applying the commensurate controls is really the point, I think, of this content here. But buying time to fix things with mitigating controls all comes into play once you understand better what really you should be spending time on. Clearly, right, a development environment is not as important as the production instance of that particular business function. I think the reason I joined Rapid7 is illustrated here. We are very much a research organization. And I would advocate to the audience that you adopt some of that as well, and whether that research be conducted through interaction with some of these teams, right, and getting to know your developers, or getting to know the organization that's responsible for a particular SaaS application and that relationship with the vendor, getting down into third-party risk, third-party security. Being a researcher first, I think, goes a long way. It's really part of the culture here. And you can see that in things like our open source Metasploit community, other projects like Project Heisenberg and Project Sonar, which is really looking at the external attack surface, getting under a better understanding of what threats are and exploitation is actually happening in the environment, all feed into what we're doing. And I would encourage the audience out here to adopt some of those principles. They go a long way in helping to really secure your stack, right? Securing your borders, but securing all those layers in the stack. Looks like we have a couple minutes for questions. The question is, where do we get started to understand our full stack? So, I'll go back to the comment I just made, right, is getting to know your business partners. I think another important business departments, maybe not partners yet, but another important element, right, that I mentioned is following the trail of the dollars that are being spent on cloud or SaaS providers, or maybe you outsourced some portion of the software development and engineering, right? Going and figuring out, hey, do I really have all of the elements of our organization or all the business functions of our organization in scope for my particular security program? Whether that be vulnerability management, or whether that be your SOC function, detection and response, understanding that through the lens of where the business is spending is certainly an effective, and I would advocate probably necessary in most mid to large organizations. Certainly, the complexity there and geographic differences and time zone differences make that should make that an ongoing priority for security teams. Another question, we have a couple minutes. How can we as a security team institute some accountability? Great topic. I would advocate, an excellent place to get started with that accountability, going back to this concept of a protection level agreement. No, not necessarily different than a KPI, but I think that's the more common reference. But having KPIs, I'll give a practical example here, right? Your mean time to remediation. Okay, is that measured today? And is it measured for all those elements in the stack, right? Is your mean time to remediation for an API vulnerability, right? What's your mean time to remediation for a third party vulnerability? What's your mean time to remediation for a traditional host, a server, for example? Being able to measure those things and then having an owner for each one of those measures, or a single owner for those measures, is extremely important. And that's how you get to some of this accountability, and ensuring that, hey, there is actually an assigned human being that is accountable to making sure that those things are in place, and then building on that, which is the knobs and the levers that we turn to continue to increase, right, or decrease depending on the measurement, but to change, right, and make that measurement better, starts with having an owner. I would also advocate that the change that you're looking to implement is much more easily understood in terms of the business, right? In terms of the dollars that being spent on that particular control. It could be a software vendor product from Rapid7, or it could be a service provider, a security service provider. But understand how much and what is being spent on that particular control, and comparing that to the risk, right? The impact is basic security risk, enterprise risk management fundamentals. But thinking about it in those terms makes it much less onerous, and much easier to talk to the business about increasing those investments or decreasing those investments, and ultimately gaining some accountability. So I'll wrap up there. It was a pleasure to speak with everyone today, and I hope that some of these elements are easy and accessible, and something that you can take away from a 20-minute discussion, and start to think about integrating that into your security programs. Thank you.
Thank you to Devin for that awesome presentation. Lots of great information, and just a really fascinating wrap-up discussion there. Now, you can all see that I've put up the poll question for you. We would love to get your feedback on any additional resources that you would like to explore from Rapid7. This feedback is so valuable. It's such a great opportunity to directly connect with the Rapid7 team, to let them know what information they can best help you with, how they can connect with you, how they can support you as you're exploring these different solutions for your organization. So please do take a moment and answer the poll. If you'd like to learn a little bit more right away, I recommend that you click on the Handouts tab. You can download the 2021 Vulnerability Intelligence Report. Rapid7's researchers examine vulnerability and attack trends, offering context and guidance for your team. It is 100% worth the read. So head on over, download that now, and you can read that after we wrap up today. But don't go anywhere just yet, because I have another exciting moment for you. I'm going to leave that poll question up. And while you're answering, I am going to give away some more prizes. So up first, we'll do one of the $500 Amazon gift cards, and then we're going to do 2 Apple Watches Series 7. Now, I'm going to remind you all that you must be present here at the live webinar in order to win. So first up, a $500 Amazon gift card is going to Cheryl Calvala. Cheryl Calvala of Tennessee. Oh, I love seeing that. Cheryl, I know you've asked some great questions, so nice to see a familiar name there. Cheryl Calvala of Tennessee, you've won a $500 Amazon gift certificate. Congratulations. And our 2 winners of the Apple Watch Series 7 are Andy Parr from Wisconsin. Roll on, Wisconsin, and Robert Kist of Mississippi. Robert Kist of Mississippi. So congratulations to Cheryl on your gift card, and congrats to Andy and Robert, who just won an Apple Watch Series 7. As always, we'll be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar wraps today. And don't forget, there are still lots more chances to win a prize, plus that best question gift card from each session. So even if we do not get to your question in the live session, there is still a chance to win. We'll review all of those after we wrap. But for now, what do you say? Let's keep zipping right along in our MegaCast and jump into the next presentation.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Imran Bashir and I'm a Director of Technical Marketing here at Palo Alto Networks. Our topic for today would be securing your borders, evolving each layer of your security program, which exactly maps to any zero trust principles. So let's get started. Our agenda for today would be we'll start with the current state of zero trust, where we stand, what are the guidance from federal government, NIST, and much more, even NCCOE. Then we'll talk about any strategic opportunities around zero trust. Then the third topic would be making zero trust actionable. This is where we'll talk about how zero trust applies to users, to applications, and to infrastructure, hence completing the entire zero trust architecture starting from users all the way to the applications. And towards the end, we'll talk about applying zero trust to cloud native applications as well. For example, any SaaS application that sits in the cloud, how do you actually go and apply controls? And then we'll end it with any resources or links that can help you to make zero trust actionable. Let's start with that zero trust is critical more than ever. We actually have a federal government guidance and executive order on improving the overall nation's cybersecurity, starting with security best practices and advance towards a zero trust architecture. So it's a very strong guidance from the federal government to actually start leading towards a zero trust architecture. Adding more to it, organizations like NIST have developed a very good guidance in terms of how to actually go and apply different principles or various principles of zero trust and make it more actionable. So this is the NIST special publication 800-207 that came out, and it guides towards various principles of implementing zero trust and multiple tenets of zero trust, how they approach to. Now, if you take it to the next level, for example, NCCOE, National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, they actually are working with multiple vendors, a technology collaboration where it's a mix of 20 plus vendors which are working towards a common goal in terms of implementing end-to-end zero trust architecture. Again, starting from users all the way to the application and anything that comes between user accessing those applications, whether these applications are sitting on-prem or in a public cloud or even in a private data center. So very strong guidance in terms of securing your borders and implementing the right architecture for zero trust. So what is zero trust? So zero trust is basically removing implicit trust regardless of what the situation is, no matter who the user is, no matter where the user is, and no matter what application they're trying to access. And I'm going to do this in the most strict way possible. Continuous validation at every stage of a digital interaction. The advantage of this simplicity is that you are essentially running the same security regardless of the situation. Now, what we see today is disparate point solutions. For example, every time a new security risk is highlighted, we race to deploy new tools and techniques. And this has created a large amount of complexity based on poorly integrated point solutions. There's a huge opportunity here. It's an opportunity to create a digital transformation, driving need for more strategic approach to secure the entire network. And zero trust is a modern security framework that fits into this transformation. So let's see what this network transformation is, starting from data center migration to the cloud and a lack of human resource that is creating all these needs to go towards a modernization and to rebuild the entire network. Now, zero trust can be the guiding principle for securing this new environment, and taking this modern, more holistic approach reduces complexity, security sprawl caused by point solutions that we saw on the previous slide. And this is the zero trust enterprise. So now let's talk about delivering the Zero Trust Enterprise, a more structured way of how we should go and deploy the whole solution in architecture. So Zero Trust is a great approach to security, but many organizations struggle to put it into practice, including where to prioritize and where to start from. At Palo Alto Networks, we are working to make Zero Trust actionable for our customers and are focused on three pillars. So first, we look at the users. We can't assume anything about the user based on where they are, etc., and what they are, right? As a general rule, users and their identity are a great place to start when thinking about zero trust. Next, we apply zero trust to applications. We cannot trust various components of applications. And at last, infrastructure, everything from IoT to supply chain. These must be addressed from zero trust standpoint. So let's look at the key principles for zero trust approach. They're mainly divided into four pillars. The first is identity. which is really validating that the users are using strong authentication techniques to authenticate on the network, which means is the password secure? Is the password protected against any phishing attacks? Is the password offered by an IDP that can also offer multi-factor authentication? Is that password good enough for any single sign-on application architectures that we need to enforce zero trust? The next thing is device or workload. And this is really about the user device which is being used to authenticate on the network and also access resources on the network. So what you need is a very strong approach that provides strong authentication to begin with, and then a continuous monitoring in terms of detecting if there's any malware that's being downloaded. How do you actually go and clean that malware, even if that malware or ransomware is running in your kernel? The third pillar is access. Now, this is where the user is authenticated and connected on the network with strong credentials. But after that, the user is trying to access resources. And in this third pillar, you define what is access, what is a security policy, and you start enforcing least privilege access for these workloads and other things that the user is trying to access. The last pillar is really about transaction. Now, this is where the user is actually going and interacting with those applications, whether these applications are on-prem, in the cloud, public or private data center, doesn't matter. But what we're doing is that we're actually going and scanning all the content and making sure there's no malicious activity going on and there's no data exfiltration or ransomware being activated that's causing that data exfiltration to go through. So again, just to recap, four main pillars for zero trust approach in terms of key principles, starting with identity, then the user device, then the user access on the network or the resources, and in the end, the transaction piece where when the user is actually going and accessing these resources, how do you actually make sure there's nothing malicious in the transaction? Now, this approach provides a holistic and consistent approach to zero trust that can be made actionable across all three of these key domains that we talked about. And there are many companies in the security industry focused on addressing a subset of these capabilities, but are unable to comprehensively deliver across the full spectrum of zero trust. So what you see on the screen is like a 3x4 matrix, which talks about starting from zero trust for users to applications and infrastructure towards the left. And on the right, you can see how these map to identity, to device and workload, to access, and any transaction that is actually happening once the users are authenticated on the network. And you can easily see that we're consistently checking the state of the network. We are consistently applying the least privilege access. And it's a constant framework where we go back and validate and check if the user is correct, if the transaction is correct, and if the device is in the right device posture. So this is something Palo Alto Networks is uniquely positioned to deliver throughout a broad set of best-of-breed security capabilities. We're able to deliver across users, applications, infrastructure, with the exception of enterprise identity and access management, basically IAM, where we integrate with our solutions of choice, example, Okta, Ping, Azure Active Directory, and many more. So again, using these different products, it just offers a very comprehensive zero trust architecture for our customers to start securing their on-prem application, their cloud application, their public cloud application, and even SaaS application. And it doesn't matter who the user is. We get full authentication of the user. We can start enforcing multi-factor authentication. We can start enforcing single sign-on, and hence completes the entire architecture of zero trust. Now, zero trust is a great approach to security, right? That as we talked about. But what you see over here is that we can also apply zero trust to applications. We cannot trust various components of application, right? For example, in the infrastructure, everything from IoT to supply chain, these must be addressed as a zero trust standpoint, right? And we kind of discussed this a lot in the previous slide that application doesn't matter where the application is. If it's in your private data center, your public cloud infrastructure, or even any data center that is of your choice. We need to treat all the applications similarly by applying all the zero trust principles as users are accessing these applications. What we see in the modern era is that cloud is set to become the dominant computing model for many customers. Enterprises that are using the cloud infrastructure are pretty much halfway in their journey to move to cloud, right? And most of these enterprises are running 46% of their workloads in the cloud, and it's expected to go up to 64% in the next 24 months. So there's a huge need to start securing your applications which are now sitting in the public cloud. Another thing to note is that a lot of our customers are saying that their company's cloud infrastructure is constantly evolving, right? That's why we definitely need an infrastructure that is checking the application health and application posture and the access to these applications all the time. It's like a constant loop. And that's what we do here at Palo Alto, and that's what is one of the guiding principles of zero trust in practice. When we look at applying zero trust to applications, it requires a very similar approach. We need to address the identity of users trying to access the application, and we also need to validate access between applications and workloads, and validate the transaction to ensure that the content related to this application is not malicious, regardless of where these applications are in the private cloud, public cloud, or even in your private data center. Now, when these applications are sitting in public cloud, a lot of customers would actually go to the full build, deploy, and run model, basically your pipeline, right? And that could be applied across any public cloud, like VMware, AWS, using Docker instances in Azure or whatnot, right? So what we offer to our customers is complete security to all your CI/CD pipeline, including infrastructure as a code, moving to CD workflows, and also getting complete visibility and continuous check across all the network. So our Prisma Cloud offering actually does that, and you get full protection even for your applications that are sitting into the cloud. Let's talk a little bit on how that's done. So Prisma Cloud supports integrated capabilities across all the leading market categories needed at every enterprise. So what we do is that we deliver these capabilities through our cloud native application protection platform. I'm going to talk about some highlights. Let's start with cloud code security. Now this allows organizations to integrate security for IAC, or infrastructure as a code, and cloud native application as part of their developer and DevOps workflows. Built on leading open source tools like check built on leading open source tools like Checkov, our capabilities are backed by a wider developer and DevOps community. Now, additionally, these capabilities allow security teams to manage centralized policies and view results, while developers and DevOps view the results in their respective tooling. Now, the second tab is Cloud Security Posture Management, CSPM. This includes monitoring public cloud security posture, detecting and responding to threats, and maintaining compliance for both internal and external compliance frameworks. We support the world's 5 largest public cloud platforms with over 1,000 CSP policies today. The third tab is really about cloud workload protection. Now, secure your host, cloud VMs, containers, and Kubernetes applications, and any serverless functions across the full application lifecycle on any cloud. So today we scale to protect some of the largest cloud native developments in the world, combining agentless scanning and agent-based protection for your applications. The fourth tab is about cloud network security. Now, these capabilities ensure that you have or you can monitor and secure cloud networks and enforce micro-segmentation across common workload architectures. Capabilities are available within Prisma Cloud and can also be augmented by our software Next-Gen Firewalls, including both VM and CN series. The last tab is really about cloud identity security. Now, this emerging area of security refers to enforcing permissions and security identities across workloads and clouds. Our architecture integrates with these capabilities into our CSPM capabilities that you saw in option number 2. So today we support AWS and Azure with IDP integration supporting Okta and Azure Active Directory in Prisma Cloud. So this is how Prisma Cloud can help our customer. As we saw in the previous slide, we can start with identity. We can also protect your workloads. And then we can start enforcing micro-segmentation for any access. And towards the end, we monitor the transaction all the time. And this could be done through software next-gen firewall or through web and API integration. And we offer a complete architecture for cloud-delivered software services to enable this transaction security. I would like to call out some of the practical approaches on how our customers are using to protect their borders, our technology, by using Zero Trust. Let's start with identity. So what we've launched is a complete cloud-based native platform which can consume identity from multiple sources. Our customers have identity on-prem, and they also have connections to multiple IDP providers or cloud IDP providers. For example, Azure AD, Okta, or Google Identity, right? So what we offer is one single unified place where you're not only able to connect to these identities and consume users and group, but you keep them in sync all the time. So let's say if you remove a user from one of your cloud IDP provider or even for your on-prem provider, within minutes, all your infrastructure will be updated. So you don't have to manually go to your enforcement points or firewalls to start updating identity information. The access for that user who was removed from the directory would automatically be revoked. And thus, this offers a very, very strong platform to start enforcing zero trust for identity for your users. Next, let's talk about how we're protecting advanced threat prevention for our customers to stop IPS, even for unknown command and control traffic. So this gives us the ability to apply it to inline detection and prevention for zero-day attacks. And these are the attacks that have never been seen before. They are not just variations of a known attack, but they're actually net new attacks, and this is in the past always been in the realm of trying our best to detect it. But with the new advanced threat prevention, we are now actually preventing these types of attacks, as evidence from our ability to prevent nearly 100% of web-based attack Cobalt Strike command and control traffic. And this is an important metric because Cobalt Strike has been one of the go-to advanced techniques and tools that adversaries are using since it's easy to create and modify payloads with ease. DNS security is also more important than ever because we're seeing a lot of modern attacks that are using DNS channel, that low and slow and leaky pipe that nobody pays attention to. But we'll also continue to bring a lot of these same advanced techniques to our DNS security platform. First introduced about 3 years ago, and this has been just an incredible area of innovation for us and what we offer to our customers, where we now have over 20 different DNS security techniques as part of the service with the latest release. We've introduced five more to this service, and what this allows us to do is to basically shut down DNS as an avenue for attackers to either get into or get out of your enterprise network. And where we stand with all these advances in DNS security now has 40% greater threat coverage than any other solution that we've seen. Now, none of this matters if you can't take full advantage of security capabilities. And for that reason, we have announced AI Ops for next-gen firewalls. Basically, what this does is two of the most important things that we could possibly do. One, to ensure that you take full advantage of all the security capabilities that we have offered to our customers, and ensure that these capabilities are configured correctly, avoid any misconfiguration, and follow all the best practices with full utilization of our security capabilities. Second, the ability to proactively detect when an operational heavy impact event is about to occur. For example, memory filling up, sessions table filling up, and any configuration changes that can cause how the next-gen firewall will behave in the environment. So that all of that is proactively detected and reported. Hence, this completes the entire zero trust verification for not only keeping the best practices, but also monitoring the health of your network and platforms. In closing, a few key takeaways that I'd like to call out is what we need is a strategic top-down approach to implement zero trust, and it is very, very critical to success, and it's very, very critical to securing your borders. Secondly, we should also include implementation details, priorities, and any incremental stages that can help you to reach your goal towards implementing a complete zero trust and also securing borders the right way. And lastly, Palo Alto Networks can help you make your zero trust plans actionable. We offer tools, we offer services, we offer reference architectures that could be leveraged to start your zero trust journey and getting full security across all your borders. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and please feel free to reach out for any additional questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Imran. What an amazing presentation. Lots of great information. And you can all see that I put the poll question up for you guys. Again, we would love to get feedback on what additional resources that you would like to explore from Palo Alto Networks. This feedback is really valuable. It helps us get an idea of what information is really important to you that helps you move forward in your journey. But it also lets Palo Alto know how they should follow up with you and how they should reach out to you and how they can support. So I think a lot of times we feel like we're kind of drowning for information, and this is a way that you can lift a hand right up to Palo Alto and say, this is what I need, this is what you can send me, and they're going to drop it right into your inbox, and it makes your life really easy. And we all know that we all need things to be a little bit easier. Getting some high fives. I see Jeff says he's a current customer of Palo Alto, and they're great. So that's awesome. Imran, a high five from the audience here. Now, I do want to let you guys know, we're a little bit short on time today, so we're going to have to keep rushing forward and get into our next presentation. However, Imran is hanging out answering some questions on live chat, so you will get some responses back from him there. And as always, we will make sure that we get all of your questions over to the Palo Alto team and to Imran. So if he's not able to follow up with you on live chat during the session today, then he will definitely get back to you after the fact. The Palo Alto team will follow up with you. And I do see some great questions coming in. Lots of questions on zero trust today, so I think hopefully we'll be able to do some more conversations on that as well. Okay, I also want to remind you before we move on, because I know that you know what's next and it's coming, but if you can all head on over to that handouts tab, click on the Palo Alto link, and you can learn a little bit more about stopping zero-day threats in zero time with Nebula PAN-OS 10.2. I love that. Zero-day threats in zero time. So snag that white paper. You can also watch the launch webinar or both. Just a lot of really cool information there. So click on that Palo Alto link. Check that out. And while you are exploring and opening those links for later, I'm going to leave the poll up, and let's go ahead and do another prize giveaway. So this is our third prize giveaway. So I'm going to get a little jazzy with you, and we're going to give away 3 of the Apple Watches. So we'll do 1 $500 Amazon gift card, and then we will do 3 Apple Watches for you all. And I'm just going to remind you again, I feel like you can all say this with me at home now, you do need to be present here at the live webinar in order to win a prize. So our next winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Crystal Mills of Nevada. Crystal Mills of Nevada, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. And our next winners of an Apple Watch Series 7 is Johan, or Johan, I'm going to say Johan, I like that. Johan Ehrman of Arkansas. Johan Ehrman of Arkansas. Tommy Willard of Texas. Tommy Willard of Texas, and Jerry Johnson of Virginia. Jerry Johnson of Virginia. You sound like a Marvel comic hero in their downtime, Jerry Johnson. All right, so that is Crystal Mills winning a gift card, Johan Ehrman, Tommy Willard, and Jerry Johnson grabbing the Apple Watch Series 7. Now, don't panic, folks, because there's still one more chance to win, plus all of those best questions asked. So to anyone that asked a question out there, and again, I know we're having to zip along a little bit today, but those questions are going to get answers from Imran and from the Palo Alto team, so stay tuned for that. But up next, folks, I don't know how this has happened already, but here we are at our very last session of the day. It always seems to come up a little faster than I think it will. But I promise you that we have an absolutely thrilling grand finale lined up for you all. I am so happy to introduce you all to our next presenter in today's MegaCast, Jason Pfeiffer, Chief Strategy Officer at Reliacquest. Jason, I'm excited to listen to your session today and really to learn a bit more about Reliacquest. I know that you have a ton to cover, so the platform is all yours.
Thanks, Jess. As she mentioned, my name is Jason Pfeiffer. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Reliacquest. Today, I want to talk to you about detection, investigation, and response in a cloud-based world. If you're not familiar with Reliacquest, I'll give you a little bit of background on us before we get into the meat of this. But we're a Tampa headquartered company, and our pure mission in life is to make security possible. We've got operations centers all over the US, as well as in Dublin, Ireland, Pune, India, London, and Amsterdam as well. We were founded in 2007, and all we do is work with our customers to make security possible and be a force multiplier for their security operations. We recently hit that $1 billion valuation back in 2001, and we've got almost now over 400 customers and growing. A little bit more detail about what Reliacquest actually does. We're a force multiplier for security operations, leveraging our gray matter platform as well as our managed services to help get you the outcomes that you're looking for. Increase visibility, reducing complexity, and helping you manage your risk. We use our gray matter platform to help tie together all the different technologies that you have that you need to have both on premises, in the cloud, et cetera, to detect and respond to threats. And then using that managed services component to help optimize and fill in the gaps and get you the right outcomes for your business so you can make those business decisions that you need to at the end of the day. So let's jump into a little bit about cloud and detection and response in a cloud environment. And I think it's always pertinent to talk about the kind of separations of roles and responsibilities when it comes to the cloud. And if you think about it, like all things in security, like you can't outsource accountability. Ultimately, those folks on here who are in security organizations or CISOs, you have the ultimate accountability for the security of your environments. But clouds change things. If you think about the old on-premises model, everything on the far left, right? You're responsible and you have full control and ownership of all those different parts of the stack. But clouds change that. When you think about infrastructure, platform, or software as a service, that changes what you actually have ownership of and what you have access to, and makes you rely upon third parties. Infrastructure as a service, you're typically from the operating system up through the application. Platform as a service, it's a little bit different, just the applications and data, but everything else is kind of hidden underneath the covers. And software as a service, you're just getting the kind of outcomes from the application itself, but you have no responsibility for the application security, really just around some application administration. So that changes how you have to think about how you secure those environments, what you have access to in the midst of a breach or an insider threat or data exfiltration from one of those applications. How do you handle that when you can't see everything that you would normally be able to see in an on-premise environment? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail today. When you think about visibility in the cloud, it really are the same mainstays across cybersecurity and visibility and risk reduction apply, right? Trying to reduce risk across the environment to make sure your business can operate effectively, threat hunting to making sure you can identify threats that aren't normally found, faster reactions and response times, right? That is the key to, I think, everything across the cyber spectrum, right? You're not going to block everything. It's not going to happen. The bad guy only has to be right once. But how do you do this in a cloud-based world? How do you move faster, identify threats that are operating inside your cloud environments faster, and respond to them in an even faster fashion? Simplified cloud management, the ability to drive business value, right? Organizations want to go to the cloud, and we hear this a lot of time from senior IT leaders, is they're trying to get to the cloud, but security won't let them. Security's holding them back. It's not secure enough, right? And I think we're starting to move past that, and security organizations are just having to make do with what they have to secure the cloud. And I think it's one of the key tenets that you'll hear from a lot of your peers is that you have to be in line with the business. You're going to have to assume some risk, but you have to build security into the cloud and do it relatively quickly. And ultimately, I think one of the key goals across every CISO and security organization out there is to continue to mature their security program. It's never over. There's never an end. It's not a zero-sum game. We don't just get to pack up at the end of the fourth quarter and go home. It's a constant maturation process. We're running a marathon that never ends. And we've got to make sure that we're doing things on a daily basis just to get a little bit better across all the environments in which we operate. Now, when you think about cloud detection functions to monitor, right? Like what's important from a cloud perspective, right? And I think one of the things that's often left out or forgotten from a cloud perspective is this data loss prevention, right? A ton of what you're doing in the cloud is focused around data, right? Building applications to house data. You've got big data warehouses on the back end, right? And how do you manage and control that data, especially from a SaaS perspective? What are you doing to make sure that all the data you're housing in SaaS applications is not just being exfiltrated out there on a regular basis, right? Flow data, what's happening inside those cloud environments between different enclaves, between production in your environment and maybe some of your third-party peers, right? How are you managing that flow data? How are you getting visibility into that? Identity and access management. We're hearing more and more about this, both from an IAM perspective and single sign-on, which I would kind of lump into that same realm. Recent attacks, where folks are impersonating Okta and other organizations, right? So you really have to understand this identity as the new perimeter. And as you go into the cloud, how are you getting visibility across different of your identity stores and components inside the cloud? And whether you're a B2B organization or a business to consumer organization, it really makes no difference, right? Credential stuffing is still holding true. We're seeing a lot of attacks from that perspective on an ongoing basis. But how are you managing and monitoring the identities in your environment? And not just the end user, identities, but you also have to be thinking about your administrative identities. Who's got access to your entire cloud? What's the threat model look like if one of your administrator accounts for your AWS environment was compromised? What would you do with that? Same thing from a SaaS perspective. What if your single sign-on, or what if your administrative account from a Salesforce perspective was compromised? How would you do with that? Who has access to that? I'd be curious to know how many CISOs on this call know who has administrative access to their Salesforce environments, or their Box environments, or their O365 environments, right? Thinking about those things of not just from a consumer and user perspective, but who's got the keys to the kingdom, and how are those being used and managed, and how do you have visibility into those environments to know what they're doing, when they're doing it, and how they're doing it. Thinking about some sample kind of cloud detection, specific detections, right? And things that kind of change from a cloud environment versus an on-premise environment. Some of the key areas where we find a lot of great value in detecting certain types of threats comes in these kind of top 10, if you will. API calls from threat hosts, right? What API endpoints are being attempted to be misused by different types of threats that are out there? We always hear about the scanning going on the internet perspective, but if you're not looking at your API calls and working with your dev teams to understand what APIs are out there and available for your cloud environments, I would start today. Make sure those things can't be misused. Make sure they're not being already misused across the board, but it's something that we're seeing active growth in. And, I think it's becoming the new attack surface, if you will, of the 2020s. Cloud instances terminated or created, right? We see a lot of this from a Bitcoin mining perspective, where unauthorized organizations are spinning up cloud services to try to be able to mine Bitcoin and slip underneath the covers, blending in with your additional instances, or your currently running instances rather, and trying to just mine Bitcoin and things like that for monetary purposes. Who's trying to access your cloud storage, right? From an unauthorized perspective, right? Cloud infrastructure changes, VPN, peers, DNS. If you read of certain types of attacks that have happened historically, like CloudHopper and others, right? There's a big premonition by bad actors to get in through that weakest link and then jump from environment to environment. And it doesn't have to just be on-prem. A lot of that starts in the cloud. They do some changes from that software-defined networking perspective, and now they've gone from your dev environment to production to maybe your VPN gateways and other hopping points into other organizations' environments. And that's continuing to be a trend that we're seeing across the board, where they're going after the weakest link. They're going after IT service providers, managed service providers, if you will, and getting access to their entire customer base just by compromising one small piece of the cloud. And whether you're an IT service provider or not, think about all the different B2B or business-to-business connections you have with different third parties to make your business run. And what would happen if one of them were compromised? And I know the supply chain sounds daunting, but think about who are those key players that have access into your environment, and whose access, you have environment you have access into, right? And just think about that from a risk perspective, and what makes the most sense to try to put some additional monitoring on your environment from that perspective. Application security, right? Web application firewalls, GitHub, things like that, code pushes and whatnot. Think about if you're running a CI/CD pipeline, continuous deployment, right? Code's being pushed constantly, many times a day. How do you get in front of that? How do you manage that? How do you know if it's being misused? How do you know if it introduces new threats to your environment, or if a threat's already taking advantage of that? Insider threats, an additional, I think, trending area in which we see compromises from a cloud perspective, especially on SaaS, SaaS portals, SaaS applications, if you will, where people leveraging those SaaS applications and the data contained within to screen scrape it, to dump information that's highly confidential, highly, valuable from their organization perspective, and they're taking it with them to their peers and competitors. So how are you getting visibility into those different parts of the environment? cloud security packages, Prisma, CardDuty, Sentinel from a Microsoft perspective, like definitely think about leveraging those and how you can use those to get in front of what's happening inside your cloud environments and things that you can do from that perspective. But we're seeing a lot of folks get good value just by turning on the simple basics. So one of the things I encourage you to do after this is to go back, work with your cloud teams, make sure that you've got on all the basics that you can, regardless of the cloud provider you're leveraging, and making sure you're using that, and then making sure you're feeding that data somewhere that your security teams can get access to it. It's not going to solve all your problems, but it's at least a good starting point so you can understand what's actually happening inside your cloud environments. When you think about response processes and automations, and we have a lot of organizations as they're going into these cloud environments, right? Working with their cloud teams, working across their security teams, working with us in our Gray Matter platform to really help automate response, across the board. And when you're in cloud, I think cloud was really built for more automation than the historical on-premise environments were. And certainly we're seeing a lot of folks do really interesting use cases and helping them build interesting use cases within our Gray Matter platform around automations in the cloud. Everything from automatically locking out accounts who they see doing things that look malicious or whatnot, and sending out account verification via emails of, hey, did you mean to do these types of actions? And doing that on an automated basis just to make sure that they're safeguarding their environment, because it only takes, a few clicks and a few minutes to exfiltrate a lot of data, right? Pulling in additional context from the environment, right? As things are changing, as in containers are spinning up and spinning down, how do you make sure that you know what's right, what's supposed to be there, what application that's supporting? So getting a lot of this contextual enrichment type data and then automating that process so that way your incident responders, your analysts know what they're actually looking at, because what may be normal in a dev environment from a cloud perspective may be very different than production, and you wouldn't expect to see those same type of changes. Visibility and responses around configuration and rule changes, right? We see a lot of this of dumping traffic, right? Using some of the SDN or software-defined networking capabilities of clouds to automatically revert traffic and dump it into a honeypot so you can see what's going on if you see things that look malicious or whatnot, right? And think about doing that automatically on the fly. Enabling additional logging, terminating processes, snapshotting data and storage. We integrate, and part of our Gray Matter platform and really the power behind it is our belief that there's no one data lake to rule them all. And so we tie into a bunch of different platforms to be able to kind of give you visibility on demand of everything that's happening across all those different platforms, almost in like a single pane of glass, if you will, even though I don't like that term, really trying to kind of make you stop and help organizations stop worrying about trying to move their data all over the place, leverage the data that you have wherever it exists and get that single view into it. We integrate with a ton of cloud platforms, cloud forensic platforms, cloud monitoring platforms like Wiz, like Cato Networks, et cetera, and work with them to help bring all that data that you need to help get that detection, investigation, and response capability inside the existing tool stacks that you're already using, right? One of the other big things that we see here is expanding threat hunts, right? Just because you have a cloud environment or on-premise doesn't mean the threats are changing and they're not actively out there snooping around or moving between your environments. So making sure that you can threat hunt across not just your on-prem environment, but your cloud environments as well. So think about how we assess risk and aligning controls, right? And we try to simplify this because you can go back to MITRE ATT&CK. Love MITRE ATT&CK. It's really deep, but there's a lot of things you can do with it. But if you think about how you kind of can boil that up, especially from an executive perspective into a couple of key areas, right? And so that's what we've tried to do here is think about it at a very high level of disruption, exfiltration, exploitation, and infiltration. And when you think about that and you break it down to this area, looking at your cloud controls, looking at the visibility you have, using this as kind of a risk framework, if you will, to align the different controls and areas in which you want to get visibility. What's going to have the most disruption to your business, right? Critical applications, denial of service attack, ransomware. So what part of your cloud infrastructure is most prone to that or would have be hit the hardest if any of those things were to happen? So using that to kind of drive your risk posture, understand where you need to put additional logging or visibility, measurements into is paramount, right? Exfiltration. If you lost certain types of data, what would have the most impact to your business? Obviously, there's the credit card information or financial data, health data from a PHI perspective, IP, right? We also see a lot too of like customer lists, sales plans, sales forecasts, those types of things where people are taking data out of certain applications and then bringing those to competitors or publishing them online. We've seen a growing trend too in disgruntled employees, I think, is the great resignation, as they're calling it, is taking hold, where people have posted a lot of information out there on the deep and dark web about organizations they're working for or worked for in the past, because they're bitter over one thing or another. So think about that too from an exfiltration perspective and that insider threat, and what that means from a SaaS perspective, where your visibility is not quite what you'd expect from an on-prem or an application that your teams have built. Exploitation, I won't dive too much deeper in that. Obviously, phishing is probably still the #1 attack vector to get inside of organizations. But think about what that means from your cloud perspective. Think about how it ties in, whether using a cloud-based email provider, and what that means for your organization. Think about, those separation of accounts, so you have multiple accounts for, your administrators versus your end users, to make sure that no one's reading email with a administrative account or one that has administrative access. I think one of the most important things to be successful in this, in your cloud journey, and as you think about cloud-based visibility, detection, and response, is gaining buy-in from teams early, right? I know people are at different places in their cloud journey, but you've got to get that buy-in from different peers and stakeholders early in the process, as much as you can do to kind of shift left, if you will, and kind of left of boom. But the further left and the earlier you can get involved with these teams as they're building new applications, building environments, it's paramount, right? You've got to get that public support and buy-in from your leadership teams. Very interesting to read some of the information that went out this week around organizations, former leaders, security leadership, exposing information about what they were doing or weren't doing from their security practices perspective. And if you think about that, most people probably at that organization weren't thinking about security and the scope and the impact that that platform would have on just the world at large 20 years later after it was built. And now they've got to go back in and bolt it on. And that's really hard to do, especially when you're trying to meet quarterly earnings every quarter, since they've gone public. So how do you get in there early, build it in early, and get that support and buy-in that, security really matters to your applications? Identify apps and infrastructure that will reside in cloud, right? Understand what's going to go to cloud, what type of cloud platform it's going to go to, and what different components you have that are native to the cloud or that you need to add to get that visibility, right? Think about what you're going to do with all that information. Are you going to put it in your existing SIEM platform if you have one? Are you going to keep it in the cloud? How are you going to respond to that if you do? How are you going to investigate new threats that are facing your organization in both different platforms, right? That's one of the problems our Gray Matter platform solves, amongst many other things. But it's where we see a huge trend, where we see a lot of organizations moving into this multi-SIEM architecture because they don't want to keep moving all their data from the cloud back to their on-premise infrastructure or back to somebody else's cloud. And so you're really seeing this kind of growth of what I like to call just data ponds. There's no one data lake to rule them all. There's just a bunch of data ponds out there. So how do you support your security teams? How do you support a fast incident response process if you've got a bunch of different buckets of data all over the place and you need to be able to access them, query them, analyze them very, very quickly? Last but not least, but ensure your cloud security and IT teams are in the loop and have the right training, right? The cloud's different than on-prem. I think we all know this by now, but make sure that you're catching up with everybody and helping them understand the differences between the cloud and your on-prem environments, what that means, and the fundamentals are in place, right? Phishing is still a huge attack vector. Make sure you're covering those things off, but then think about credential leakage. Think about what processes and methodologies people are using to post code and to manage that cloud and what that means. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. I think, Jess, we have time for a couple of questions.
We absolutely do. Jason, thank you so much. That was just an awesome presentation. I'm so kind of buzzing. That was a lot of great information. I love the emphasis that Reliacquest place on visibility. I think that's really important, and so often, it sounds so obvious, right? You need to know what you have in order to know what to protect. But the reporting and visibility sometimes get a little lost. So I think that's a really great point. And I love that change management point. Really bringing the team in and making sure that people understand the why and the what side of it. Is that something that Reliacquest, do you offer training support with that as well?
We don't offer training support with that, no, but we can we help organizations understand what they have and then how we can tie that visibility together. So we can help them understand of like, hey, these are different applications, things that you have. Here's how we can tie into this, get you the most visibility to help drive that better detection and response.
I really like that. So giving companies the tools to understand where they're at, and then they can take that out to their team from there.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, we've got a lot of great questions coming in, and we're a little short on time, so I'm going to keep things rolling. You ready to jump into some audience questions here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. I love this question. People are always curious about different solutions and what makes them sort of unique. And we have an audience member here wondering what Reliacquest does differently to help their customers manage some of the key issues that you identified in your chat.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the paramount thing that makes us different is our technology platform, Gray Matter. I know I mentioned it a couple of times, but we do have this belief that like we see it all the time. Like, organizations are spending all this time trying to move data into one single SIM or one data lake and trying to spend all their time getting that data in the right place so they can actually analyze it. At the end of the day, where technology is now is every technology is almost like its own analytics engine. So we just harness the power of our customers' existing technology footprint and then bring all that data together on demand to give them kind of a real-time view into what's happening and what they need from an investigation and response perspective, from an automation perspective, from threat hunting and even breach and attack simulation. We've also recently tied in threat intelligence. We purchased Digital Shadows, one of the leaders in threat intelligence recently, and have tied them into our platform as well. So now we have views not only into all the different disparate technologies that our customers have in their cloud or on-prem environments, but we also have this external threat actor, deep and dark web, visibility as well. So really kind of gives our customers a 360-degree view into what's happening both inside and outside their environments.
Okay, awesome. Well, what would you say is the biggest obstacle that most companies face? And this person here is wondering, how can they avoid that in advance?
I think the biggest obstacle is definitely kind of trying too hard, too late, and trying to bolt everything on, right? And sometimes, and we've worked with a lot of organizations who have done this of just kind of starting over, right? But if you get there too late, you're trying to bolt on, you're trying to take your on-premise security architecture, bolt it into the cloud, and not thinking differently about the cloud, it's never going to work. You're going to spend more time maintaining integrations, maintaining configurations, and everything else. Where if like you have to take a different lens to the cloud, sit down, plan it out. I know you never have enough time to do that, but try to do that and try to think differently about it, because the more you have to bolt on, the more you're trying to use duct tape and bubble gum to make this thing work and tie into your existing tool set. It's just going to become this huge monolithic, thing at the end of the day that's eventually gonna fall over.
Boy, I hear you. We talk about that Frankenstein approach a lot, that you just start, tacking things on, and then it's that much harder. And it's so funny how we never seem willing to make the time. Well, not willing. We feel like we don't have the time to put in that upfront research. And so it's easier to just tack. And then all of a sudden it takes 5 times as much time to go back through after the fact.
One of my favorite sayings from an old leader was, you never have time to do it right, but you always have time to do it again. And so it's something to think about, but there's a lot of truth behind that.
There is a lot of truth behind that. And I hope for everyone out in the audience today that you're going to spend some time thinking about how to do it right. And speaking of that, for anyone in the audience that has just been absolutely lit up and is ready to learn more and maybe get started with Reliacquest, Jason, what do you recommend? What's their first step?
Definitely go to our website, www.reliacquest.com. I'm sure we can probably put it up here. There'll be information they can get through the webinar or whatnot, but definitely go there. We've got some great blogs too. We've got a whole blog and white papers around getting visibility in the cloud and whatnot, and some key metrics you can use to drive kind of executive buying, those types of things. So I would definitely start there. You can engage or interact with us on the website as well, but more than happy to go that route.
That's awesome. Well, Jason, I wish we could keep going. We are out of time, but this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us, for chatting with us about Reliacquest today. And I hope we'll get to chat with you again soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, a big thank you as well to everyone who asked questions. We got a lot of great questions. I'm seeing a few people chiming in that you're also really appreciating that that truism, as Jeff says, that Jason gave us right at the end there from his leader. I think that is an unfortunate truism for many of us, that we end up redoing things more than we end up feeling like we have the time, the resources to really plan ahead. The great thing is, by being here today, you have taken a step towards that planning ahead. So that's awesome and really exciting. And I know that you all got a lot of great information out of all the presentations, and really in particular this last one seemed to strike some interesting chords with you. So thank you for asking questions. I do want to let you know, since of course we didn't have enough time to answer all the questions, that we will make sure that they go to Jason and to Reliacquest, and so you will get a follow-up on any questions asked. A few of you noted that Reliacquest is a new friend of Actual Tech Media, or maybe new to a few of you out there, and that is really exciting. So we're looking forward to chatting with them more and learning even more about them, hopefully on future events. So stay tuned for more from Reliacquest. If you are itching to learn more about Reliacquest right away, there are two things you can do right here in this moment. One, answer the poll. Answer the poll. Let them know what you would like to hear back. What additional information can Reliacquest send you? So click there and send that directly to that Reliacquest team, and they will follow up with you and make sure that you get the information that you need that can help you best understand their solution and what your needs are. The other way that you can get started with learning a little bit more about Reliacquest, and I'm going to highly recommend that you do this, is head on over to that Handouts tab. I've been chatting about it all day. So head on over, find that Handouts tab, and there's actually a white paper there called Securing the Cloud. Absolutely fascinating read. And I want to point out that there are additional assets hidden within that white paper. So there's an additional 4 assets, bonus content. And these additional links are going to take you to a couple of videos and papers. They all focus on cloud security. It's kind of a choose your own adventure deep dive into some of the key areas that Jason was just chatting with us about in his presentation. And if that was all not exciting enough, there's also an easy way that you can reach out and chat directly with a Reliacquest representative to get any additional information or answer any questions. So basically, a lot of cool information packed into that handout link. So be sure to go and click on that or answer the poll there. Okay, now while you are clicking on the poll and clicking on the handout section, I'm going to give you a little more time to do that. And I am going to, what should I do? Oh, let's give away a prize. How about that? So we're going to do our last prize giveaway. So this, as a reminder, is going to be a $500 Amazon gift card. And then we will give away three Apple Watch Series 7s. So we will give away 1 Amazon gift card and then 3 Apple Watch Series 7s to 4 lucky winners here. So the first, the 500, and I'm going to say it again since I didn't say it this time. Reminder, you must be here in live attendance at the MegaCast in order to win the prize. I can hear you all saying that with me. So first up, a $500 Amazon gift card is going to Omar Drisi of Maryland. Omar Drisi of Maryland, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. And then our 3 winners of the Apple Watch Series 7 is Abhishek Sakor of Texas, Melissa Lauby of Ohio, and Jonathan Robarts of New Hampshire. So you have won, and I'll repeat that again. It's Omar getting a $500 Amazon gift card, Abhishek, Melissa, and Jonathan all getting an Apple Watch, and we will follow up with you after the event today. Now I'm going to read out the entire prize list, and I'll move on over here. Last chance to click on the poll. Run if you didn't do it. Oh, done. Okay. So now, if you are looking at the screen here with me, you can see there's a cool little QR code up there. And that's actually going to take you right to that white paper that we were just chatting about. So scan that QR code up and get that white paper on your phone. Read that for later. We got a long weekend coming up, so start storing your additional reading materials now. So grab that white paper, make sure you click around and explore. Now I'm going to read out the entire prize list today, so because we always get asked for that. We want to make sure we hit our prize winners. So Gift card number 1 went to Mark Allers, and then we had 2 watches going to Jonathan De Los Santos and Adam Hendrick. Gift card number 2 went to Cheryl Calvala, and then our watches going to Andy Parr and Robert Kist. Gift card number 3 went to Crystal Mills, and then we had 3 watches going to Johan Ehrman, Tommy Willard, and Jerry Johnson. Gift card number 4 went to Omar Drishi, and then 3 watches going to Abhishek Thakor, Melissa Lauby, and Jonathan Robarts. All of you are prize winners today if you're here at the webinar, and we will follow up with you. And again, a reminder that if you did ask a question in any of our sessions today, even if we were not able to get to your question in the live session, you are still entered to win that best question card. Okay, last chance to get those phones up and scan the QR code. Make sure you've done it. And done. Okay. There's that reminder that we will follow up with you about the best questions. And then another fun reminder up on the screen for you right now is to make sure that you check out the Actual Tech Media ransomware guide in the handouts tab. We've talked a lot about security today, and of course, one of the major things that we're thinking about on the end of that is ransomware. So you can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to understand, how to prevent, how to recover. Visit ransomware.org for more information, and you can explore that a little bit as well. Okay, now if you are on the MegaCast today and you're thinking, this sounds like a lot of fun, I too want to hang out with Jess and have a fun conversation with David and Scott, we also want to talk to you, so reach out. You can find us at connect@actualtechmedia.com, and we would love to have you present on a future summit, EcoCast, MegaCast, webinar, whatever is getting you pumped up, we want to get involved. Well, and with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers from Rubric, from Rapid7, from Palo Alto, and our new friends at Reliacquest for making this MegaCast possible. A special thank you to all of you for attending and asking some really great questions. I had a lot of fun with you today. It was just a great MegaCast, lots of participation from all of you out there, and that really does add to the energy and the flow of these webinars. So thank you very much to everyone who participated, who chatted with our team today and with our speakers. We really enjoyed that. And I hope that you've all collected some helpful tips, some new ideas about various approaches, solutions, and strategies that are going to help you build that most effective security program at your organization, whether it's a rainbow, a layer cake, an onion, a castle, and a moat, however you describe it. Hopefully you've gotten some good information. And I do want to remind you before you take off today, be sure to mark your calendars and come back to join us on Wednesday, September 7th. That's next week at 12 p.m. Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. And we're going to have an awesome EcoCast on understanding the reality of ransomware preparedness. This is another incredibly important and exciting topic. So be sure to register now. Get that in before the long weekend comes up. Make sure you get those that registered, and then you can head out into the long weekend. And then when you come back, we'll see you on Wednesday for an EcoCast. And until then, I hope that you folks are all having a wonderful day, and I hope that we will see you again soon.